Hi, everybody. Welcome to UX Untamed. I'm Juliet, and I'm so excited to have you all here. As you know, UX Untamed is a space to inspire and empower others to maybe find their foot into UX design or to see and check out what it is to work in tech. Today, I'm super excited. As always, I'm super excited as always about my guests. I'm bringing a UX writer. She's going to tell us all about what she was in technical writing, why she came into UX, uh, what are the type of projects, the skills, and maybe even some tips for all of those who we are not writers and we don't have someone like her in our team. So anyway, let's bring her in. Daree, welcome to UX and Tame. Thank you for being here.
Hey. Nice to see you again,
Yes.
Juliet.
Yes, see you again. I know. We were just talking that we met maybe even more than couple of months ago, and
Yeah, maybe
the
like
time
6 months
fly. I
ago.
remember telling you, "Oh, this is going to be November." Anyway,
Yeah,
yes, it's here.
yeah, time flies.
Time flies. Why don't we tell people a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Daree. I'm currently living in Virginia. I have one child. She is in college right now in her second year. And I've moved around a lot. I've lived all over the place, but only on the East Coast. And just writing in general, I've been writing since I was like 12 years old. I
Mhm.
used to write short stories, very creative things,
Mhm.
very non-technical things. I used to have this composition book that I would pass around in high school. It was like 10th or 11th grade. I'd like write scenes of a soap opera and then I'd share it with my friends. They'd be like, oh, this person should do this and they should do this. They should say this. And I just write scenes of a soap opera at, 16 years old. So I've always been a writer. I was more creative. I've had journals since I was 12. I have all the journals still. The journals helped me write my first book. So I've done not every kind of writing, but many different kinds of writing in my life.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I mean, I feel like this is just fun. What you just said to me. I love novelas, telenovelas. I'm Colombian, so we watch a lot of telenovelas and we have a lot of drama happening.
Yeah, yeah.
But what would be something unique and fun about you?
Yeah. Something kind of unique about me is that for the past year, have been eating a carnivore lifestyle, like a carnivore diet. I say diet, but usually when people say diet, they're like, it's just temporary. But I've been doing it for a while, except that I have a couple of, weaknesses. Like one of them is Reese's peanut butter cups. Like that is totally not carnivore, totally not keto, but love them. So Halloween just passed, had to have some of that. And anybody that knows me really well knows I gotta have my Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee. Gotta have the iced coffee, and it's gotta be sweet. It's like some people have coffee and espresso, and they have a little milk. I like to have a little coffee in my milk. Like it's all about the sweetness and the different flavors, especially with fall here. So that's something about me. I'm also a runner. I like to run long distance. I'm getting ready next Saturday to do an 8K race at the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I also teach kickboxing and line dancing. And I love to travel. I am actually going to Colombia in 2 weeks, Juliet. So I will be
Oh,
in your home
what?
country for a month.
Where?
So there's a bunch
Wait,
of unique and fun things about
yeah.
me.
Like, where are you going in Colombia? This is so exciting. Oh,
Yeah.
the
I'm going to
food.
start off
You're
in
going to love the
Cartagena.
food. Mm.
And then I'm going to go to Medellin and I might go to Bogota and Guatape and visit some
Yes.
other towns.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're going to, I think, the way that you were just explaining about the food, you are going to have so many choices. Oh my goodness. Like in Medellin, if you like sweets, I can send you a place. There is like the place to go to have sweets. It's like the paradise. So I will send you that. That's pretty cool. It's like
Yeah.
as you were telling all the different things that you do, is like wow, when you have time to all of this is amazing that you do all of this. Yes.
I know. And I have to be active to,
Yes.
to take care of all that, those non-meat sugary type things. You know what I mean? So I'll be doing a
Yes.
lot of walking when I'm in Colombia.
Yeah, oh, definitely. You're going to love it. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
You told us a little bit about how you started writing when you were super young, and then you made it all the way to technical writing. How did you go from novella drama, telenovela writing into
Yeah.
technical writing?
Yeah. So I actually hopped around to a few different, I actually have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, but the journey to get the bachelor's was a little bit disheveled. It was not a straight line where I just went to one school and then did the program. I actually transferred twice. So when I finished, I actually ended up at this upper division school. If you think about a community college is like your first 2 years of college credits. So it's freshman and sophomore. But an upper division school is the last 2 years. So it's junior year and senior year. So since I had already done a bunch of stuff, schooling in upstate New York and still didn't have a degree, I ended up coming back home to my hometown and going to that upper division school. And so one of the few communications majors they had was called professional and technical communication. Big mouthful, very long to type it and even to say it. And there weren't a lot of programs in the 90s for, degrees in technical writing. I don't think there were really any. It was very weird because I remember when I joined my company and I'm working with all these senior people and I told them about it and they said, I didn't even know that there was actually a college program for tech writing. So I'm kind of like a pioneer there. And I ended up, getting recruited because when I started at that upper division school, I didn't start in the fall like a lot of people do, like August or September. They start their semester for college. I started in January at that school. So when I finished, it was December, which is not a common time to graduate. And so there were only 3 people in my graduating class. So when Lucent Technologies came calling and saying, hey, you've got a professional technical communication program, we need an entry level technical writer. Do you have any students that stand out to you? And so the dean gave my name. I mean, there were only 3 of us that had graduated anyway. It wasn't hard to find me. And literally less than 2 months after that, I graduated in December, interviewed in January, started February 2nd of that following year. So I don't have any experience with, early on with looking for a job, going on interviews, because I was recruited right from college and then I stayed there for 22 years. So when people come to me and they say, hey, how can I? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't do that. I'm one of those, lucky people that got drafted right out the gate. So, yeah.
Well, what I like about this story, even when you were sharing a little bit that you were a writer, is that you followed that dream. Even it was so different from the technical writing, is that you made it all the way there. And yeah, like you were saying, you were a pioneer in the technical writing world. But why? What did you like the best, and what you didn't like
Okay.
about it?
Yeah. So, I would say to this day, even though I'm not like my role is not technical writing anymore, one of the things that I miss is writing step-by-step procedures. When you as a technical writer, you're writing things that are long form. You're not writing little short CTAs and things like that, and you don't have space constraints. You're writing long form. So I can explain things better. I can talk about the background. I can tell people step by step, click on this, do this, do this. So I enjoy actually like helping people figure out how to do stuff. And I routinely to this day, I critique, like if I get an email from PayPal or somebody like that, people that are, companies that are well known, and it says, well, here's how you do this. I guarantee you, I'm going to go on their website and the steps that they've given in the email do not match what you're supposed to do. And then I have to figure it out and fumble around for 5 minutes before I can find, the drop down or the button or the icon or whatever to get done what I want to get done because the email wasn't clear about the steps. And that happens to me all the time. I'm sure it happens to you all the time too. So that's one of the reasons why I like technical writing and UX writing, is because it's like I understand as a user how hard it is to try to get something done, especially when it comes to finances, getting things done, getting answers, and being pointed in a direction, but then it's like you're thrown for a loop after you go to that direction and you're missing some steps. And so I excuse me, I empathize, which we always talk about empathy in UX. I empathize because I'm frequently a person that, even though I feel like I'm pretty tech savvy, still get lost with certain things. So I want to like help people not have to struggle. And honestly, a lot of people talk about the older generation having trouble, but really it's not necessarily just seniors. I'm not a senior, you know. Some things don't have to do with age. It just has to do with bad design. It just has to do with things that weren't thought out very well. So to anybody that's like, oh, you know, that's an edge case, or, you know, we don't have, you know, seniors in our personas. No, 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 no. When you make things easy for one group, you make them easier for everybody, which is sort of an accessibility discussion. But that's some of the background as to why I liked doing that kind of thing with technical writing. And I was the only writer that was assigned to software stuff. So in the beginning, when I first started, those first 3 or 4 years, maybe, I was doing strictly hardware documentation, and it was boring. I was in the telecommunication space, and it wasn't exciting. It paid good, but it wasn't exciting. It was boring. And so eventually I got to switch off onto a software product, one of those where, I'm dating myself, you have to either use a CD-ROM with an EXE, you know what I mean? CD-ROM. People wouldn't say, when they say CD, some don't even say ROM. So it's just like, okay, this girl must be real old because CD-ROM. But look, that's what it is, okay? So we had those. We actually printed manuals. Okay, we printed manuals, and if there were mistakes, we had to reprint them. There was a print shop. We didn't print them at the printer, but I'm just saying, like, when's the last time you heard of a company that printed manuals and sent them, like thick ones? Okay, so I'm sort of like a dinosaur, just trying to stay relevant here.
I love it. Oh, I never knew what to do with the manuals, honestly. And it's like such a it's intense. I feel like we're like writing all of that and making sure that I wouldn't get bored and understand what is happening. It's a tough job. What will you say then? I know you told us a little bit how you really like that process of really make it easy for people to understand what they were reading and follow the instructions. And not just follow the instructions, but make it happen. Yeah, because that's what happened many times, that I'm following the instructions, but I'm missing a step or I'm missing something, and then I have to figure out by myself. What you didn't like about technical writing?
One of the things, the two major things that I didn't like about it was, one, it was always difficult to get information. It's kind of like the secret society. The software engineers and the product people are over here. They're huddling like Family Feud. They're all in a huddle, and they're like, okay, this is what we're about to do. We're not, you know what I mean? We're not going to let them know. We're just going to, and it's like, this should not be a secret from me. I'm the one writing it. I know you don't think it's a priority. I know that's like okay, we have to ship the product. We'll get a manual to ship the product at the end. But what's really important is development. That's the most important thing. Well, I need to be in on it. I need to be hearing what you're talking about. I don't necessarily need to be at every single meeting, but I need to be aware of things before it gets to like too far down the pike. And another thing that I didn't like is that it just seemed like there was not a lot of opportunity for growth after a certain point. So I did different projects in the beginning, and there was even a time where I was a floater. Like, there was a point where, Juliet, I got a pink slip. I was told that I would not have a job. 2005, I got a letter from my manager saying, like, you know, we're letting you go. All this stuff is going to India. You know, your services are no longer needed. And then I went and got a temp job as a technical writer. 2 weeks later, manager calls me. I'm working at the other job. He doesn't even know, because I'm like, I'm not going to wait for the shoe to drop. So I'm already working at the other place in a physical location. And he calls me. He's like, Daree, you're being retained. And I'm like, I am? Really? So 2 weeks after starting this temp agency job, I put in my 2-week notice and stayed with Lucent. So, which was, I think by that time had changed to Alcatel-Lucent. And then when I left, it changed to Nokia. So I survived a lot of layoffs, y'all. But after that happened with the whole you're being retained or you're not being let go conversation, I was asked if I wanted to work from home because it would save them money. They wouldn't have to like pay for this office space. Would I like to work from home? In 2005, wasn't nobody doing that. Nobody was offering their employees in corporate America to work from home. I was like, yes. And so that's the way it's been ever since. I have been working from home since 2005. I love it. But yeah, the downside was it was hard to get information. And I didn't really feel like there was a lot of opportunity for growth. And I started floating at that point when I was working from home. So there was always something hanging over my head, like you're not committed to a product, so we might let you go. But I ended up eventually getting into things that were assigned to me. So it worked out.
Um, uh, do you mind to share a little bit about that? I'm kind of interested in that work from home idea in 2005, and a little bit that you were not included in meetings. Yes, like how is that dynamic? Because now you were not going to be present and you were having a hard time to be on the meetings. So what happened now that you are at home?
Uh it was, I don't think that it was any, to me, it didn't seem much different as far as being included or not being included. I will say that, of course, being in a building with your engineers is helpful because then you can walk over to the cubicle and, you know, got a question, they're not busy, or y'all can go into a conference room and they can draw. I need drawings. I can't draw, but they can. So draw the clouds, draw all the different configurations that I need to understand on the whiteboard. That's helpful, but you can still do it virtually. And what I ended up doing as the years went on, I just started asking a lot of questions. Like every engineer may not make time for you, but there's usually a couple of people that are really good to easy to work with. They have a personality where they understand, you know, that content is important. And, you know, if you have your questions, they're valid. They don't try to make you feel stupid. They don't shun you or ignore your emails. Those are the people you latch onto. Those are SMEs that you want to like keep in your back pocket. And whenever you need to know the nitty gritty of what's going on in software, you know, in their clandestine meetings, you can tap into those people to get information and to also, if you want to, get included on the meetings that you need to be present for. So I just made allies with some of my SMEs that I clicked with. And there's usually at least a couple of people that you'll click with that will help you out.
Yeah, and I think for me that's one of the best tools that you can have nowadays. I feel like in any type of team, if you're working with a team, that's what you wanted to do. You always want to find that there's always someone that you're going to click with. So I feel like it's like you need to find that vibe with someone that you're able to really sit down and talk. And they're going to give you usually all the good stuff. So yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. But then, okay, now you are not into technical writing anymore. Yes. So why did you ended up switching and moving to something else?
Yeah. I definitely overstayed my welcome, I guess. I didn't overstay because they didn't want me to leave. But I overstayed personally because I think we all know, whether it's a job, something in your personal life, whatever, we all know there's something inside of us that tells us that something is not fulfilling or something is not right or something that may have been working before is no longer working. We all have those voices. We hear them. We sometimes heed them. We sometimes ignore them for a while. I'm one of those that ignored it for a while. So when I say that I was there for 2 decades, it's kind of shocking because even though I got gray hair and stuff, I had this gray hair since I was 20 years old, you guys. I've always had this gray hair. But it's like saying that, it makes me sound old. I'm a Gen Xer. Nobody that's even a Gen X was staying in one job that long. Like the boomers were, but like I'm an anomaly. My friends don't stay in places, just like millennials, you know, and Gen Zers aren't going to stay somewhere for 2 decades. The reason that I stayed so long is because the working from home gave me the capacity and the flexibility to be able to take care of my family. Most of that time, I was a single mom. Maybe like there were 3 or 4 years where I wasn't, but most of the time I was single. I was the main caregiver. And I was also, when I was married, I got remarried later on, and I was a caregiver to my husband, but he became terminally ill. And so he had to see doctors all the time. So I just needed that flexibility to be able to do what I needed to do. After he passed away, I still stayed at that job for uh, 2 more years. But when you experience something traumatic, like the passing of a loved one, you can't help but start evaluating your own life. You can't help but start thinking about changes that you need to make. You know what I mean? A lot of people think about changes now and this time of the year because we're near the end of a year. But when someone is born or someone passes away, you usually think about your life and you think about the meaning of life. And I'm like, you know what? I have been unhappy for a long time. I need to do something different. And that was a decision that I had to make because, like I said, I stayed 2 years after my husband passed. And 2 years passed, made it 2020. We all know what happened then. Now everybody was working from home just about, and it was all of a sudden okay. And everybody started to see what I have been seeing for the past, 16 years. Like, you can still be productive. You can still get things done. You might have to reconfigure some stuff. You might have to have some conversations with your family members, but you can make it work. You can do what you need to do for professions like ours. Obviously there's some that you can't, but for what we're talking about. So um, that was the reason that was some of the things that were going on in my mind and in my life when I decided to make a change.
Thank you so much for sharing. And why UX design, UX writing? Like, how did you come in tech? Like, where did the spark come in? Yeah.
Yeah. So UX writing, I actually, Juliet, I did not know the term UX writing, the term content design. I didn't even know what to call it. I didn't know. I figured it was a thing, but I didn't know anybody that was doing it. So even though I knew people that worked at Google and other stuff, like all the different roles and the titles, I didn't know all that stuff. And I had always been curious about writing app copy, but I just didn't know it was a thing. I was like in another place mentally. Then I started looking at different things. And I actually, before I got into UX, discovered UX writing, I was considering and talked to my manager about L&D, learning and development, to become maybe an instructional designer, because that also seemed adjacent to what I was doing. And I had helped with some instructional design stuff before, writing objectives for learning courses. At this time, I was also, by this point, a voice actor. And I've done some commercials and stuff, but the main thing I was getting booked for were things that were like corporate narration, e-learning. If you listen to my voice, you can kind of hear like why people will want to pick me for that, the way that I just sound naturally. So it's like, that was something that I was thinking about first, instructional design, then went over to UX writing. And I just wanted to do things that were more fun, things that I could relate to, things that, if I'm at a party or a reunion or something, I could tell my friends and family, something, about, well, what do you do? And I can kind of explain it because everyone knows what apps are. They don't know what all that central office back end stuff is, from installers. Like, that's not, a layperson's lane. But when I explain what UX writing is and what I do, maybe we'll be watching something on Netflix or, the cable program, like they're all Roku, they're all the same. They have those, different rows of content where you select what you want to see. So I'll just take opportunities like that for with my parents. They come over to my house actually every Sunday. So it's like, we'll watch something and I'll be like, hey, when I first started doing UX writing, I'm like, you see these words right here? You see that little message that says you cannot fast forward the commercials? I wrote that, like, you know what I mean? And now it makes it really easy to explain. So I'm not doing this just so that it's easy to explain to people, but it's just an example of how I think that it's more relevant and more relatable than that tech writing that I was doing for 20 years.
Yeah, makes sense. And um, how was that transition for you, even though you have all this experience, but in a different kind of field? How was that for you?
It wasn't bad at all. Like I was so ready. I was so ready to break out. It's like, I just let the world pass me by. Like I said, I wasn't on any job interviews. Like, you want to talk about like a crash course in trying to get a job, okay, in 2021 when the pandemic is in full swing and the economy is crazy and we got, the masks and we got everything going on. It was wild. But here's what I did. I took a course with the UX Content Collective. And I probably just did a search and they came up, right? They probably had really good SEO because there's Udemy, there's lots of places that have courses about UX. But I ended up going with UX Content Collective. I was looking on LinkedIn. I was reading what some people were saying about different things. You got that social proof. And so what I did was I slowly started applying UX principles that I was learning in that course to my technical documentation that I was writing. Like I couldn't really do much when it came to like the API calls and stuff. That's way too technical. But there were other things because I did software documentation. I work with SaaS products, browser-based web products. I could like like really thoughtful suggestions about, the dialogues. How come we've got, the left and right CTA buttons should be consistent throughout. Like, why do we have the positive one over here and the negative one here on this screen? But then when we get to another dialogue later, they're reversed. Like, just different inconsistencies and even like suggesting different words. I ended up making a whole spreadsheet with different UI components and just talking about this is what it looks like now, just like a copy doc. This is what it looks like now. This is what I'm suggesting. Here's why. Talk to the software manager, like the guy that was in charge of everybody, the director rather. And he was like, this is a great idea, Daree, but we don't have time right now. So just write a ticket, we call them bug reports, but ticket, whatever, in Jira, and I'll assign it to somebody and we'll get this done like, in the next software release or whatever. So just slowly suggesting changes to things, but always being ready to explain why you want to change it, because whenever you say you want to change something, that means work for somebody. And some people have that philosophy of, if it's not broke, but it's like, yeah, well, we want to improve the quality. Maybe no one's complaining about it, perhaps. I don't know, because I didn't know about our customers. But just in case, let's just go ahead and just improve it anyway. While you're already over here doing this, why don't we fix that too?
That's so powerful that even though you were taking the courses and it was not like a UX field like you were in, but you taking those, it's like, okay, we can improve this. Why don't we do it? And I think just that's a great way to show and promote your skills. It's like, okay, I'm here. How can I help in something as simple? I mean, it looks simple, but for you to be able to be aware of it is really powerful. So yeah, thank you. So what are the skills that you didn't have and you have to learn to be now in tech as a UX or content writer?
So some of the skills, let's see. So I didn't know anything about user journeys prior to studying UX. Didn't know about design thinking. Had to learn about that. And there were some standard components, UI components that I just wasn't used to writing for. So I was used to writing CTA buttons and, headlines and things, but just kind of getting more into different principles. So for example, one principle I can think of is to proactively prevent errors. I'm very, very passionate about error messages based off of what I described earlier. Like I want to, like, if I can help you get around some stuff that you're trying to do by telling you like, do this first, then this, not leaving out any steps, that is really helpful because now we can just keep moving on. We don't have to go back and get that nasty red text that tells us that we didn't do something right. So those are just some of the things that I learned from that course. I also learned about the importance of balancing user needs and business objectives. So of course, the product managers and the directors, they're trying to make money for this company. There's things that they want, to roll out, either updates to features, new products. And that's great because that's what keeps us employed. However, we need to balance that with the user experience. What is the point of putting out a brand new feature if nobody's using it or understands it or it doesn't meet their needs? So balancing those two is really important. Couldn't do that with technical writing because the voice of the customer was hidden to me. I didn't know what users wanted. I was writing blind. But now that I'm in UX, we've got research. We actually have data points that are not secret. They're shared with everyone and we can iterate. So those are some of the things, some of the skills that I had to learn and understand in order to transition.
Nice. Yeah. What about the things that you enjoy the most now that you are on the other side?
Yeah, I love being able to see a tangible impact because I know the data now, because it's not a secret, being able to see and hear the tangible impact that, changes, just simple copy changes of a word here, a word there, can help people working on things that are relevant that I can talk to about family and friends. And mainly that research aspect. I don't necessarily want to become a UX researcher, but I love partnering with them and watching, listening in on user sessions. It is so impactful and so insightful to be able to hear verbatim what people are saying about your product or how to navigate a screen or whatever. Because sometimes you can use their exact words, as not just as ammunition to change things, but within the copy somewhere. Like, what are the terms and phrases that people are using? Quick example. I was working for a different I went from one telecommunications and technical writing to a telecommunications company in UX writing. And so one of the things we always talked about was the internet, the speed, router, modem, gateway. What's the difference between a router, a modem, and a gateway? Do people really understand the difference between those three things? The answer is no, they don't. We've done lots of different UX research, and the average person does not know what the difference is between a modem, a router, and a gateway. But they're probably going to pick one of those three terms to talk about their internet, their home internet service. Which terms are they using most often? Let's use that term. The term that they were using all the time was gateway. Nobody knew what a gateway was. Nobody knew.
I have never heard about this gateway before. Never.
So
I don't know what it is.
It's just like listening to your users and being able to have that understanding of these are the terms that people use. Let's not go over their heads. Let's not like use a 12th grade word when we can use a 6th grade word.
Yeah, totally. Love that. I mean, I work for the government, and I think sometimes this is a hard topic because when we are choosing to write something, it has to do so much with legal too. But it's like I don't know what I'm reading. I need so much text on it. And what we're dealing with is, in my case, is with people's lives. Yes, like I work in the immigration side. This is like people's living, changing lives, and changing what they do, what they love to a new space. And when you don't understand what you're reading, is so hard. So for me, this is one of the things that is more powerful to have, because sometimes, again, for government, we cannot do that much changes on design or improve much because but it's something as simple as how you writing and how you are communicating with people. It can warm up people's heart and make them understand what to do next. So for me, this is like such a important thing. Yes. Okay. What about the projects? Were some of the difference and some similarities between technical writing and now UX writing?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So when I was a technical writer, I worked with software engineers, developers, whatever you want to call them. Those were my SMEs. I also worked with product managers, but I only had, one or two meetings a day max, like maximum. It was very siloed. There was a lot of independent work that I could do and not be interrupted. I could focus. UX writing is not that way. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of collaboration. It's a lot of people giving their opinions, talking to you. And some of these meetings are impromptu. Some of them are scheduled. It could be a lot of people on them. It could just be a working session. It's a lot. So I'm an extrovert, but if you're somebody that doesn't really like, you know, doing a lot with multiple people and having a lot of people weigh in on your words, don't do UX writing. Don't do it. Stay somewhere else where you don't have to talk to people. Because with UX writing, you will have to talk to people. Another thing I thought of is that technical writers, well, at least my technical writing was very formal and boring and straight. With UX writing, we're writing more friendly language, conversational language, everyday plain language, which I think is good. And I will say that both of those roles shared some of the same tools. Now, I didn't use any design tools as a technical writer, but I used Confluence, Jira, SharePoint, and some things like that, like project management stuff. But I think that with the projects themselves, I would just say that technical writing is just way, way, way more technical. There's a lot of stuff that just, if I started talking to you about it and using that language, you'd be like, what? A configuration of who? Yeah, it's just very hard, even for me. And I'm supposed to understand it if I'm writing about it. Even for me, it takes a lot to process. Like, it's a big cognitive load to understand and make something that to me is very abstract, very down to earth, was really hard for me. For some people, it's not that big of a leap. That's another reason that I prefer the UX writing more. What else? I think that you also work with more disciplines in UX writing. So again, technical writing, I didn't know anything about my users. UX writing, I've got a lot of information. I got data. I've got researchers that I can talk to, or I can look at their reports. Both of them require product management, but I just feel like there's many other roles that I interact with as a UX writer. And both of them have in common that no matter what project it is, when you submit some content for review, chances are you're going to be waiting a while to get feedback, or you're going to have a meeting to go over it because people don't have time, or they missed your email, or they didn't see your Slack message. So there is still for both of these roles, a lot of waiting for reviews to be done, for approvals to get done. But there are some decent differences there.
I wanted to, if you can talk a little bit more about that. When you work as a UX writer, there's a lot of people telling you what change it to this, and I'm just thinking about my experience with our writer, because we usually sit down and it's like, okay, this is the idea, what we want, this is what it happens. We give it to her, she works on it, and then we come back and meet again, and we're like, hey, can we change this? Can you make it shorter? Ooh, did you check out how we look in the mobile? I think it's too heavy. Can we change it? And then this is just us in our team, and then we give it to the product owner, and the product owner, no, legal just said that this doesn't work. Can you just remove this, add this? How do you manage that? This is like, and for me, I think that was one of the most interesting thing working with the writer. So many voices coming from everywhere. Yes, because let's say we will finish something, and then she will go to her peers that they will have more experience in X topic, and she's like, they will say, hey, can you add this, that, and then they will bring it back to us. It's like, oh, this is still too heavy, too long. Anyway, how do you manage this relationship?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I would suggest, and we also have that same problem where I work. My suggestion is that, and I don't know that this can come from the writer because I've been trying to do this for a while. Try to get working agreements, establish processes. There's always growing pains when you have, a bigger team than when you have a smaller team. And all of my experiences are with large corporations. So I haven't had the luxury of being able to avoid the scenario you just presented. And so what I would say is that we have to lay out what those expectations are for everybody. And it's not fair to come back to the writer. Like we want to review and have our voices heard and things like that. But for how long? You know what I mean? Like some people we have, release cycles or feature cycles or whatever that last, a few months at a time. And then we have to move on and iterate or do something else. So there needs to be, this is something that they say at my job all the time, there needs to be a definition of done. Like, when is this going to be done? How many reviews are we going to have? Who needs to be involved? Because sometimes, like you said, you think it's this person, but then they share it with somebody else. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't even know where you got that feedback from. So now the person becomes the middleman or the middlewoman, for lack of a better term. They are in the middle and you don't even know where the other feedback is coming from because that person wasn't identified to you as somebody that was crucial to review your copy. So I think having a process with working agreements that people will commit to and adhere to. It's one thing, I can make up all kinds of processes and share all kinds of working agreements all day long, every week. But if it's not agreed upon by everyone, if they're like from the top down, then it's going to fall apart and people will just revert to, the chaos that they're used to. So I would say, try to get those working agreements in place. And even if it's not agreed upon with everybody, we have to, as individual contributors, we have to feel empowered enough to assert ourselves when something is going awry. So in the beginning of the project, if it's the first or second review, maybe it's okay. But if it drags out or if it just gets too complicated because there's way too many cooks in the kitchen or something hasn't been, fully, like expectations haven't been fully described, then that's going to cause a lot of problems. So I think it's up to us. We may not be able to establish all the processes, but we can give some input. We can bring some solutions. It's always great. I think any manager should agree with what I'm about to say. It's one thing to come up and be like, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. Okay, well, you're bringing me all these problems. Now what? Like, you expect me to solve all your problems? Like, no. Take initiative, like suggest solutions, present the problem and solutions. And I think that they'll appreciate that. I've never been a manager, but I'm gonna say that they'll agree with that comment right there. So just try to assert yourself. This is what's going wrong. Listen, I'm only one person. We've been working on this now for 8 weeks. I've got to move on to something else, or I got to take something off my plate over here so that I can play with y'all for another 2 months on the same thing where we're going round and round about the same sentence or the same headline or the same word for 2 months. Can we please move on? Or I won't be able to do that over here, what you want me to do.
I love it. And I think I feel like that goes with you having experience of working in these as a writer for so long that I love what you say. Like one of the comments is like, "Oh, you went right away into like, I will do this." So yes, thank you. I want to talk maybe a little bit if you can share like kind of what is like a day to day or like a week. I know I don't have that into my questions, but as we were going, it's like, oh, I didn't ask this. I don't know why. Like, what is a day to day or like a cycle as a UX writer, content writer?
Let's see here. So one job that I had, I honestly didn't know what I was working on until I got like a Jira ticket assigned to me. Like that is how I would know that I was supposed to be. I mean, I generally knew like I was working on this app, but I didn't necessarily know what was like I didn't have any insight into, the product roadmap, what's coming up next quarter, next 6 months. It would just be like, okay, do this, give us this. It was sort of like, it was almost like I was an order taker. Okay, can you update this screen? Can you give us a new headline for this? Can you give us a tooltip for that? Like literally, it would like just all random things would come up. And at that time, I was the only person working on the app. So it was very overwhelming. I was working on the app and the like this TV interface that's very similar to your Netflix, Roku, YouTube situation. So there was that. The job I'm in now, UX writing, I know in advance, like I know the quarterly projects that I'm going to be working on and what I'll be doing. So it's not like a big secret. But there's different meetings to discuss, like, you know, can we do this? Can we do that? It's kind of like you're thinking through and mapping out that customer journey or that user journey. These are the things that they're trying to do. What are some of the obstacles that could come up? And again, balancing, how do we satisfy this business objective over here that we need to make this money or do this thing or like push this out with what's the experience going to be? Is this going to help people? What do they need to know in advance to prevent errors? How can we communicate this as clearly and concisely as possible so that we can get them on their way? So that's something that's not really answering my daily life, but my daily life is lots of meetings. And we talk about the things that I just said. So it's like, there's like usually Fridays are calm and there's not a lot of meetings. Like yesterday was Friday and I had no meetings, but that's not the normal thing. Normally there's lots of meetings and there's lots of side conversations like Teams chats, Slack chats, where like people are pinging you and just asking simple questions like, hey, can you do this? Or what do you think about this? They'll like a UX designer might post a screen in a chat message. What do you think about this? Should we change this word? Just on the fly stuff, as well as regular meetings, impromptu working sessions, which I really enjoy because I don't want to have to be the one thinking about the words all the time. I think that creative ideas can come from anywhere. I don't care if you think you're not a good writer, you've still got some ideas that are worth sharing. So I love to have working sessions with designers to kind of flesh things out. What else do I do on a day-to-day, week-to-week? I have been updating a lot of copy decks lately, copy docs, copy decks. There's one of the tools that I use at this particular company is called Airtable. And before starting with this company, my experience of Airtable was really just filling out surveys. Somebody would send me a survey. It would be an Airtable survey and I'd fill it out. It looked like a Google Doc to me, no big deal. I didn't know about the spreadsheets and the linking of the cells and all the different, all that stuff. I still don't know it all, but I've been teaching myself that. And so I've been spending a lot of my time the last maybe 3 weeks updating old copy decks. I went to the Button conference and one of the sessions was about content design debt. It's similar to design debt where you work on something and then there's, elements of it that you can't use and that becomes debt and it just kind of sits and it lingers and now it's old. So when I'm the last few weeks of me trying to clean up copy decks, there's old ones that have some content that's correct, some that's not. And, I've only been with this company for like just under 6 months. So I really don't know the history of a lot of this stuff. A lot of writers that have left the company have left behind this content design debt. So, balancing, working through like these are the, assignments that you have right now that you're going to do in the next few months or whatever, with that content design debt of those things that kind of just got left by the wayside. They didn't get cleaned up. Maybe there's old ideas that we couldn't use before. Quick example. Some of the notifications we send are text message notifications, SMSs. And prior to like now, we used to have this limit. All of our vendors would limit us to 160 characters. So sometimes we would have to send 2 messages instead of 1 if we can't get all the content in there. But now we have a vendor that does not have a limit. So we can make all of those 2 SMS sets of copy 1. Well, all of those are content design debt because some of that stuff is outdated. Sometimes, the writers on this team used this word and I used a synonym, not knowing that they were using this word over here. You know what I mean? Look, you're nodding your head, Juliet, because you know what I'm saying. These are some of the daily things that happen.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think for us, I really like the examples that you were giving at the beginning is like, oh, before is like, I just have these tickets and I just have to write the stuff. It's like, I'm thinking, what context did you have? You just have to sit
Yeah.
down and go in the flies. Like for me, that was
Yeah. I had to kind of
amazing.
look for it. I had to always ask for it. There's so many, I got hundreds of tickets that had no background information. I'd be like, we need you to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, what, where is this screen in the flow? What was happening before we got here? What are they trying? Like, I'd have like 30 questions because they didn't say anything. They would just be like, we want you to do this. Okay, but I'm not an order taker though. Like, you need to let me in to the whole scenario. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's been one of the most powerful things that we have done in our team is really include our, we call it comms person, as a part of the design team. I think and because we were working in a new product for my company, everything was kind of new. But the good thing is that she knew so much. She's been working for the organization forever, so she has so much knowledge about everything that it was happening. But because she was not included from the beginning, it was hard. But it's like, oh, doesn't make sense. So then we start doing a little more like one-on-one meetings. We will be on the team. It's like, what do you think? This is what we have. And I think that changed so much our relationship, and the process improved so much. And I think we were like now saving time. At one point we were so back up because we didn't include them from the beginning, that when we went into that second phase, is like, no, wait, let's have you at least talk twice a week. Let's sit down and we walk you through everything that is happening. We will share what this means did, what we have in the sprint review, whatever it is. And I think we just create a relationship. I think, and then again, that's so powerful as where we are today. It just changed definitely everything so much that we can improve. There is always, and I think that content depth that you were saying is like, oh, we have so much stuff that we, let's go back to that later. Or it's so hard. So I, yes, totally understand. But what I'm interested, as you know, I'm not a writer. Definitely not a writer. And I love when you say, oh, everybody can say something. It's like, thank you for believing.
No, yes, but it's true.
Yes, definitely. And I'm not a writer, and let me give you an example, because we work in two different contexts. So we have like clients, and when we work with clients, we bring the content person. But when we work like yeah, oh my goodness, tools for the agents of inside tools, we write all that. It's like, oh my, you're going to let me write this? Okay. So what do we do? Like, and I think there's a lot of writer UX designers that don't have someone like you on their team, and they have to sit down and come up with all these ideas. Do you have any tips for us as a designers to improve our UX writing, and we don't want people to get lost in what we're saying? How do we do that?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I could say. So um, one of the things that I used, I talked about the UX content collective already, but and I'll mention a couple of courses in a second. But for someone who wants to try something that's free, there's a free email course. I think it's like 15 days of UX writing prompts. It's called the Daily UX Writing Challenge. I'll say that again, the Daily UX Writing Challenge. It's a free email course. So Google that. I don't know who runs it, but I know that there's a Facebook group attached to it when you sign up. It's free, and they send you a link to the Facebook group where you can talk to people and get feedback on your work, because they just send you one prompt every day for like 15 days or something, and you just work at your own pace. It's not like you have to do it every day, but they're going to send it to you for 15 days so you can get feedback. And it doesn't matter when you start it, that it's just always running. At least it was when I tried it last year. So that's free. If you want to take the paid UX content collective course, there's three of them that I would recommend. And I am a part of that collective, by the way. I am a grader for some of these courses. So if you are a technical writer, and I know we're talking about UX designers too, but because we also talked about technical writing, if you're a technical writer and you want to continue to be a technical writer, but you just want to add some UX stuff to your work, I would suggest you take the course called UX Writing for Technical Writers. But if you're a technical writer that doesn't want to do it anymore, or anybody else that wants to just do UX writing only, I would suggest taking the first course I took that I mentioned earlier, which is the fundamentals of UX writing. So either the fundamentals, if you don't want to do technical writing, if you want to keep doing technical writing, do the technical writers course. And then everybody, including UX designers, everybody can benefit from another course that came out this year called it's called Accessibility for UX design writers and designers. It teaches you all about WCAG, I think it's called WCAG or WCAG. Those elements, they're adding to them all the time because, as I mentioned earlier in this interview, if you are making something accessible for seniors or disabled people or anyone else, then you're making things more accessible for everyone. Everyone has helped. I do not text with my fingers anymore. I stopped texting with my fingers a long time ago. I always use my voice. The only time I don't use my voice is if the microphone thingy don't work on my phone and it's acting up. But I'm always by default going to that, saying what I want to say and letting them text it out, even if it's somewhat wrong. So accessibility principles help everybody. You should learn about it. And then my final tip for UX designers or anybody else would be to partner with someone who is good at content. So whether they have a role as a writer or not, I work with an accessibility designer who used to be a technical writer. So just because someone has a role that doesn't have the word content or the word writer in it doesn't mean they don't know how to write. So just find someone that knows how to write and partner with them, whether it's at your job or somewhere else, to understand the way that they think and why they're making certain choices to change certain words or to maybe position something in a different place on the screen. Maybe the design is not accessible. Maybe the words are okay, but the design, maybe the modal should not be at the top. Maybe this button shouldn't be placed where you've placed it. You know what I mean? There's all these different things to consider. So those would be my tips for people who, maybe are not writers right now, but they want to improve or get into UX writing.
Uh, Again, a question that I didn't have here, but how, as a UX writer, as a UX designer, can be a better teammate for UX writers? What do you think that I could do that we can improve our relationship?
I would say one of the things, this is just me personally, I don't know if every writer feels this way, but just limiting, we can't always just not do this, but just limiting the number of ad hoc, quick one-off requests that are on the fly. So if there's something we've been working on together, we've had working sessions, we've had discussions, but then you ping me a week later and you want to know about changing a word, someone said something, that's fine. No big deal. But just thinking that you can work with a content person like that only and not really spend time to build that relationship, to have a working session, to understand what each other's doing, that's not going to be good long term. So I would say, just like I was saying earlier, to find an ally, find someone that will partner with you. I believe that most, if not all, content designers and content strategists welcome a good relationship with their product partners and their design partners. We don't want to struggle. We know that there's going to be different kinds of feedback and we're going to have to iterate. We all know that the first thing we write will not be perfect. Rarely is it ever perfect the first time. Very rarely. We know we're going to have to iterate. But, just finding allies and building that relationship really goes a long way. I felt like that was helpful to me as a technical writer also, because sometimes I felt like, I'm not going to get on the phone with a person. I'm just going to use email, but maybe email is not the way to get to this person. You might have to figure out the best way each, person works. And that can be a lot because every single person has a unique personality. Every single person is not an extrovert or introvert or wants to be collaborative. So that can be challenging to remember what each person, wants to do. But if there's a particular person that you're having a hard time working with, you might just have to have a one-on-one to get to know each other, build that relationship. One of the first things that I did when I started this position, and I have not done this before, was to on purpose schedule a one-on-one meeting with each person that I would be working with regularly. So yeah, I have a one-on-one with my manager every week, but I'm talking about designers, all kinds of people. Like, let me meet you, find out where you live, because we're all virtual. Where do you live? What do you do? You got kids? You got a cat? Like, what's going on? Because that helps. Because now we're together. We're partners, all trying to benefit the user experience. We're not just, the copywriter, which I hate because I'm not a copywriter, you guys. UX copywriting together, like those two words shouldn't go together. Like, I'm writing copy, but copywriter means something else. That's more like content marketing. That's not content design. It's a different thing. And I do content writing, but I don't do it as a copywriter. It's still a different definition. So yeah, I would say build your relationships. I feel like I'm going too long. Sorry.
That's okay. No, thank you so much. This was so good. Again, I'm so glad that I brought you in. This is one of the topics that I'm super passionate about, maybe because I'm not a writer and I'm always like, I need someone that is good so they can they can do this for me. But I know a lot of people is super interested in this field. So thank you so much for sharing what you do and for being here. And good luck with your running next week.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Julia. This was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, and for all of you that watch or heard us today, just make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss people that like Daree, and you meet more amazing stories here. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye bye.